Cool. We are live. All right. Thanks, Steve. That was Feeding the Cats by Steve Cleveland. And welcome, everybody, to Russell's Wall of Sound. Today, our guest is Hank Hadeed. He's a guitarist out of Portland, Oregon, who's been on the scene for the whole time I've been on the scene. Plays regularly at the Oblique Coffee House with a band called Monk Raw. That's with Johnny Ward and Fred Ingram. I'm playing bass on that. Steve Cleveland plays piano, and Johnny Ward is playing harmonicas and all kinds of cool stuff. And Hank Hadeed is playing guitar with us on that one. It's a fun little gig at Oblique Coffee House from what is it, 1 to 3 on Thursdays. When we feel like it.
Most of the time.
And then let's see. Yeah, so Hank, I'll let you take it from here and maybe tell everybody a little bit about some of the other projects that you have and where people can find you.
Thanks, Russell. Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Hello. Good to have you.
I've always got various things cooking. Currently, I've been playing a lot with the NoPo Big Band, which is a 17-piece big band out of North Portland. I've been around for many, many years. I've been with them playing as the guitar player for a little over a year now, about a year and a half, and we rehearse. It's a regular rehearsal band once a week, and we play around town, particularly in the summer. Played at a number of different festivals over the summer, and it's a miscellany of big band fare, all the way from Count Basie stuff, Sammy Nestico, kind of standard big band fare, but as a good group of players, and that's stuff I've really enjoyed doing. And so I've been doing that. I also play in a little ensemble. Steve plays in this too, called the Roulette Quartet. And we play around town at different retirement communities. So it's a band playing a miscellany of pop tunes, country, bossa nova, swing tunes.
So
what's the vocalist Sandy Young?
Oh, Sandy Young, cool.
Yep.
So what's really landing in that school or in that world these days? I know that when I've played for older folks at this point, a lot of rock and roll seems to be more prevalent, like stuff that they recognize. Elvis.
That seems to be what they call for.
Yeah.
Right.
La Bamba was a huge hit.
Yep, La Bamba was a great hit last time around, and they love anything they can dance to. But
yeah, I've actually, from their enthusiasm about that music, I've actually gotten more into it. I never really. Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name all of a sudden. Who's the guy with Buddy Holly? I never really was a Buddy Holly fan until I started playing in those communities more, and people were requesting certain songs, and I was like, "This is great!" I just love the. He had it's a style of rock and roll that was kind of light, and he wasn't screaming. It sort of reminded me of Chubby Checker or something like that, where it was slower tempos and not quite so over the top, but it was actually really artful, pretty.
And this
cool.
is the music that people grew up with.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
And
exactly.
it's often the music that you heard, whatever the music is, from about 3 years old to about 13 years old, maybe into teenager. That's the music that leaves the biggest impression on you for the rest of your life. That's what I find. And it almost doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is. I can hear the Kingston Trio any day of the week if they play some oldie of the Kingston Trio, because that was, I was of the generation where that was one of the first guitar oriented musics, strictly guitar oriented vocal musics that I was exposed to on the radio. Obviously, I was exposed to many other things before that too, and standard rock and roll. But anyway, I don't love the Kingston Trio necessarily, and I certainly never listen to the Kingston Trio. And yet, if a Kingston Trio tune shows up on the radio, it brings everything back, and I'm 7 years old again, or whatever it is. So I think a lot of that, that's what happens at these retirement communities, is they end up asking for and wanting to hear this music that made a real impression when they were young, as we all do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I used to resist that a little bit more. And I think I kind of do. Like I'm still, I feel like I'm more open to new music than a lot of people I know. But there's definitely just no question that stuff that you heard when you were that certain age, like 10 to 20, basically, like that music, like just it is so meaningful to you, and it like brings back tears just hearing a certain riff or something. And it's hard to explain because it's not necessarily like some of the lyrics that or some of the bands that I liked back then had lyrics that nowadays I don't really connect with. Like Nirvana, I love Nirvana, but like the fun factor is a little low. But just like hearing some of those riffs just like makes me feel good. I don't know why. It's like emotionally, I got so into that stuff that when I hear it now again, it brings that back, even if I can understand that it's not necessarily all great.
When the band starts Louie Louie,
Yeah.
I'm a kid again, instantly.
Yeah.
And that was a Northwest band, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it that one? I think that one has a big F-bomb in there that is.
Oh,
Yes,
right.
yep.
That's
Or,
right.
or
saw
at least,
that.
or at least that's the mythology.
It sure sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
The drummer plays like a sloppy fill, and then you like a few seconds later you hear a big. Ah! Anyway, it's great.
That was probably the first rock guitar solo I learned as a kid. I think was the solo to Louie Louie.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Is that one that's kind of like? Is it kind of? How's that one go? Can you play
You
it?
know, it's a, I don't remember it anymore, but it's a,
Is
but
it
it's
kind of
a standard
triplety
Chuck Berry kind of, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. What's that axe you got there?
That's a Gibson L5
Beautiful. Right on.
that I've
Yeah, it's a pretty guitar.
had for about 3 years now. I've been playing. This is probably my main performing instrument right now.
You had it for 3 years, huh?
Yeah.
Like a pandemic score?
Yes, exactly. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic. I knew I was going to be home for and
Too long.
boxed in for who knows how long, and I said I'm going to treat myself to another guitar.
Yeah. How many is that now?
Well, I've got a whole family of guitars here, but they're pretty stable. I think a stable dozen right now.
What's special about the Gibson L5? Everyone has one, or not everyone has one, but everyone that's like the coveted jazz box. And
Yeah,
I'm thinking about upgrading myself because I have this Lore guitar that has all the specs, like it should be awesome, but somehow or another I'm not. I've had it for years and I haven't quite fallen in love with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that's all about, but yeah, it's like hand carved.
Yep.
Has like a real what do you call that? Not like plastic for the top, like it's real lacquer
Yep.
on
Exactly.
it. So if you get a crack, it doesn't just pull back all that plastic and like ruin your
Right.
wood top.
Exactly.
You can actually like glue it, buff it out, and But anyway, so it has all the things that I was looking for, and a nice pickup and the whole thing. But somehow I'm like, I might just have to go Gibson, which I sort of try to avoid, just going for brand names. But
Yep, yep.
But boy, Gibson
hear ya.
Gibson sure does it right sometimes.
Yep, and they vary from decade to decade. This is not a real vintage L5. It doesn't go back to the 60s or the 50s. This is
Well, I
more
think it
recent.
doesn't.
This I think is 2001. Uh,
Oh, cool.
but that those years were fairly good years for Gibson Factory. I think this was made in Nashville.
Yeah. See, like in my era, the Les Paul was finally, Slash was selling everyone the Les Paul again, and so everybody overpaid for these Les Pauls, like in the 2000s, in the 90s and 2000s, for just like a black Les Paul, and so everyone like talks about how this one's so much better and so much better because they're trying to sell theirs that they overpaid for. So it seems to sort of like push. But anyway, so it sort of like made me think a little less of like Gibson in general because of that trick that I kind of feel like they pulled on us. But you go back to the older guitars and there's just no question that Gibson is amazing.
My experience is you always overpay for whatever you're buying, and you always undersell it. I had a Gibson Les Paul Custom, Sunburst Les Paul Custom many years ago, decades ago, and I think in those days I probably bought it for $300, believe it or not,
Yeah.
and sold it probably for $150.
Dang it.
The ones that got away.
Yeah. What's the one that got away for you?
Well, really, I've had over the years, at some time or another, I've been able to play and own and play regularly almost every guitar model or type of guitar, at least category, that I've wanted to at some point. I never had as many guitars as I have now, but I always had a guitar. My very first prized guitar was a Martin D35. And I was doing a lot of finger picking and that sort of stuff in those days. And I really wanted a Martin, and I got a Martin D35. I got it right after I got out of high school. I recall I worked all of high school to save enough money to buy a Martin D35, and then I kept that for many years. But
What's the D35? What's that one look like?
Okay, the D35
was like Dreadnought.
It was Dreadnought, and there's the standard Martin guitars are D28, which is in a way the more popular Dreadnought Martin guitar, and the D35. The difference between the D35, I think there was some bracing difference and that kind of thing, but mostly it had a little binding on the neck that the D28 didn't have, and for no particular reason, I loved that little white binding on the neck of the D35. Mm-hmm. So I was always lusting after that when I was a kid.
So it was white.
Yeah, it was a white binding. I think similar to the kind of thing you see here on the L5. It was just a white, little white neck binding.
Yeah, so plastic.
Yep.
Plastic on guitars has been a thing since day one, or not day one, but since, especially since the introduction of the steel string guitar. There's plastic on guitars. It's wild.
Yeah, I know.
Martin had that famous Martin crack that they were getting for years there because of the plastic pick guard that, obviously expanded at a different speed than at a different rate than like the rest of the wood, and then that ended up causing a crack. Or like one of my prize possession instrument is my grandma's Martin ukulele from the teens. The other teens, the 19s, and that had plastic on it. It's just kind of wild to me. It's like, wow, they have like Bakelite and plastic on these really early instruments. Cool.
Yeah, I had a number of cracks in that D35 over the years. I was heartbroken when I saw the first crack, and I didn't realize at the time that really doesn't affect the sound in any significant way, and maybe it even allows the instrument to breathe a little bit more. I don't know. guitars to me, I mean, I know the standard kind of aspects of construction and so on, design of guitars, but I'm not a real expert by any means in how guitars are constructed. For me, it's the look and the sound of the guitar, uh, and that's and particularly when I was younger. So the reason I got a D35 when I was in high school was because my guitar hero in the town I grew up in played a D35, and he was the finger picking star of where I grew up, and and I was had no concern about how it was constructed or what it was made out of, uh, and then I'd learn terms like Brazilian rosewood, and say, okay, that's nice, Brazilian rosewood, that's important, but
Mm-hmm.
but
Do you remember that person's name?
yeah, his name was Don Potter.
Don Potter.
Yep.
Cool.
And where was this, Hank?
This was in Rochester, New York, upstate New
Okay.
York.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I first started playing guitar. First started taking guitar lessons.
And he was
Learned
like a
my first,
solo,
learned my
solo
first
guitarist.
rock and roll riff, and
So, and he played solo.
yeah, he played solo. Also played in a duo. They were a little uh, folk duo, doing originals and doing covers, that type of thing. And they played in coffee houses. That was the days where
Yeah.
coffee houses were very popular, and and that's what I was into at that point in time.
It's amazing how many talented people there are out there, right? I mean, just
Yeah.
how like in every town that I've been in, big or small, there's just often in the small towns, actually, that I've been in, I'm just kind of like, what are you doing here? You know, like you see, certain people that you're just like, wow, whoa, like how did you? How why are you living in Bellingham? Why are you living in Olympia? Like what is up? It's like it's just there's an incredible level of talent out there. And the difference between somebody who makes it big or somebody who just has a lot of talent, there's almost no connection.
Yeah, yeah.
I have noticed that most people who make it big have a fair amount of talent. Like you got to be able to play something. But it's just amazing, like how I've run into just some incredible musicians and over the years that are not well known, but should be
Yeah.
if the world was a perfect place.
Rochester in those days was a very, very strong musical town because they had an Eastman School of Music, uh, and they had people like uh, Pat Martino was always hanging around Rochester.
Hmm.
He didn't live in Rochester; he lived in Philadelphia. But he was. That's when I first heard Pat Martino. Before Pat Martino was really well known, and Chuck Mangione came out of Rochester, and lots of horn players. Can't think of anyone immediately. Names don't come to mind, but anyway, it was a very vibrant town for all sorts of music. That's when I first heard jazz. Really, was in Rochester. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is a guitar that I built, and so you can kind of see that one of the things I really like about this style, this is what's called the mini jumbo style, but it's a really feminine look, right? I've noticed that like a fair amount of like the kind of Martin dreadnought guitars have this really like squared off top and like somewhat not exaggerated hips like this. Like this has these really wide like Marilyn Monroe hips on the on this guitar. Anyway, it's just something that I always as far as like the look of a guitar is concerned, that sort of that masculine feminine look. I really
Yeah.
like the sort of more feminine looking ones.
I have a John Goodall Royal Concert guitar, which is it's not the exact same design as what you have there, but it in a way I would describe it as a more feminine design than a dreadnought design.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I see
You can
that.
see that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's not a full red knot size, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it has something to do with how this angle right here at the top,
Yes, exactly,
is a big part of it.
exactly. Yeah.
That's nice. Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. So you have a wood binding on that one, huh?
Yep. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yep. Yeah.
See, that's when I was building my guitar. The guy that I built it with is a guy named Don Greeno, um, out of the Eugene area, and he had just lots of opinions, uh, and one of them was that that doing wood binding was so much more beautiful and difficult to do than doing a plastic binding, especially like on the neck. He was really impressed by, like, I thought about doing a wood binding on this neck, and he encouraged me not to do it because he said you can't handle it, basically, which is true. Like I barely got this guitar together. It was a lot of work for me. It was really hard to conceive of the whole idea ahead of time, but it's kind of amazing. I mean, I would, if anyone can have that opportunity to build an instrument, it really changed a lot for me. Like just how I think about art versus craft, and sort of in art, mistakes are cute. Mistakes in an artistic piece can take you to new heights and new ideas. In craft, a mistake is just a mistake. Like, you messed up, throw it away, start over. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That was kind of how he had, how he thought about things. And I remember at one point, like, he leaned in and he said, he said, "Look, I can see that you're doing a lot better paying attention to the details." He said, "Now do that with every aspect of your life."
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
He said, "Pay attention to the details. Don't make mistakes." I was like, okay. Don was very serious about that. I obviously didn't take that entirely to heart, but it definitely, like, yeah. When I run into an engineering problem at this point of any kind, a clogged sink, I will kind of like jump down and look at it from 5 different angles now. You know what I mean? Like, instead of just like trying something and then trying it harder if it didn't work the first time, I jump down and take 30 seconds to observe, like, oh, where's that? How's that line meeting that line? What's going on there? What's this here?
Once you've built anything, it changes your perspective on whatever that is. And certainly true of building a guitar. I built an electric guitar many years ago. It was a Telly. I still have it. It's made out of solid piece of koa. And,
Cool.
but I had to build it from scratch, from just a solid piece of koa. The neck is ebony fingerboard, and
is the neck koa too?
Yep. Neck is
Cool.
koa also. It's amazing. Yeah,
That's beautiful.
But I had
That was
to do the whole
typical
thing.
of
I took a
ukuleles,
course,
right?
same thing. I took it took about 12 months, I think, to build it. And took a course and how to use all the instruments, all the all the routers and everything else, which I had never done. But after that, my entire perspective on what it means to play an instrument was different. Once you've actually built something, the feel of it becomes different. You may not necessarily become a builder, and a guitar builder or any other builder, but you can't go back. And in a way, how you live your life changes. I agree.
Wow. You all have me beat. I never have made a piano. I never put a piano together. That'd be pretty difficult. But I'm really impressed that you guys can make guitars.
Have you tuned a piano?
No, I've tried, and I have a friend who wants me to learn and thinks it should be no problem. It's just easy. What is there to it? You just tweak some knobs, but it's like I feel like I might really break something unless I really know what I'm doing. But I tried once and it didn't go very well.
And the nice thing is, if you have the space, there's a lot of free pianos out there.
That is true.
Like that,
That
could,
is true.
You could experiment on.
That's true.
I suppose if you broke a few along the way, that would be part of learning.
I'd hate to break this one though.
That was.
I
what,
keep trying to tune this guitar, but it keeps going out of tune. Every guitar I've ever had goes out of tune sooner
my
or later.
goodness.
I don't understand it.
There's something you're doing
You
something
should
wrong.
only
there?
be able to tune once, and
Yeah.
that's all you need.
Some of them do a great job though of staying in tune. I've been
No, I know.
surprised.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure what that is. I mean, I guess it's tuners, but then I've also had guitars with really great tuners that seem to go out of tune. Like two guitars that I have with Grover tuners like seem to have a trouble with staying in tune. I'm not quite sure what that's all about because those are supposed to be great. Yeah, I noticed with making the guitar that it was all pretty much craft except for a few little flourishes, like how we did this part right here with this little addition to the kind of mustache bridge here. That was sort of like a little artistic flourish that I could throw in. And then the big thing was the neck. You know, when you put this on just a table and start sanding it down, and the neck is really like the part that you actually have like a lot of input into, you know, how you build it. Did you take your telly neck and really spend some time with that?
Yep.
Yeah, that was that's the part that really does it the most. I've never built an electric before, but I want to. I just found that I just bought a couple of really cheap electrics, and I'm really satisfied with them. I can't believe like how good they can make a computer can make a really nice cheap guitar these days, and you know.
Yeah, that guitar sounds great. That you
I
have.
know, it's so weird. It's like
really
a little,
good.
yeah, this little cheap little telly that I got that just it sounds better than it should, and it kind of annoys me because I'm like,
Yeah.
how am I gonna justify ever spending like $1,000 on a guitar again when I got one for $75? It sounds
Yeah,
fine. Yeah, right on. Cool. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, as far as playing is concerned, is chord melody. So if I'm sure you're aware, but if you know, for the audience, if you're not aware, the highest note in any chord becomes a melody, right? So I can play a C major chord like this, right? A three note version. The G's up on top, right? As soon as I put the C up on top, right, suddenly that note pokes out to you. And as soon as I put the E up on top, that note points out to you. So, right, I'm not sure if that's audible in the room. Right. So utilizing that kind of basic technique, I mean, people can play incredible melodies just with a series of chords. And do you have some favorites? People who do that exceptionally well. Like who are some of your favorites that do that?
Well, the classic example is Joe Path in terms of chord melody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's who I grew up on.
You ever seen any of his instruction?
Yes,
videos?
I have.
Yeah,
Yes,
I love how he's kind of like he's so surly. You know, he's like smoking a cigarette, and he's like, "Guitar should be easy." He's like, "Make it easy."
I
I
know.
like it. I like guitar to be easy, and but then he plays some stuff that's not easy whatsoever. But anyway,
Years ago, I was in Boston. I was living in Boston, and Joe Pass was scheduled to play at a local Boston club, and I had tickets, and there was a massive snowstorm in Boston, almost shut the entire city down, but somehow he was already there. I guess he had already flown in, so the show happened, and I went, and I think there were maybe half a dozen, maybe a dozen people in the audience. That was it. 10, 15 people, all guitar players primarily. So instead of doing the usual performance, he turned it into what amounted to a 3-hour master class with Joe Pass,
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
just taking questions and so on and so forth. It was really a
Joe Pass
once in a
came
lifetime
up.
experience.
Joe Pass came up last week, or our guest last week, Alan Alexander. He got to know Joe Pass a bit, and they hung out. He said he's a great guy, real down to earth.
Didn't you say they spent the night drinking whiskey?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Another great chord melodist was Lenny Breau.
Lenny Breau's incredible.
Yeah, he's probably one of the world's greatest guitar players.
Yeah, and his
He
tone.
passed way too early, but that's often the case.
Oh, I don't really know much about that. When did he? What age?
I don't know exactly how old he was, but probably 40 something.
Hmm.
Young, relatively speaking. I was living in Toronto at the time that Lenny Breau was around Toronto, so I heard him a lot in those days and playing everywhere, and just fantastic technique. He's very influential.
So I have
Finger style, but also not just finger style, artificial harmonics, all those kinds of things are associated with Lenny Breau. But master of chord melody.
Does Wes Montgomery do the chord melody stuff, or is he doing something different? A different approach?
Wes Montgomery, yes, and Wes Montgomery has a very specific approach to chord melody, and really what is in a sense a more standard approach to chord melody, which is just using these kinds of four-note voicings on the top of the guitar, and often using diminished voicings.
Right.
So a typical Joe or a Wes Montgomery chord melody would resolve in some way like. That's going from.
Yeah, what was that?
So we're in here. This is F sharp minor. Let's pick another. Let's pick E minor, like autumn leaves kind of thing. If we're going. And I want to go from B7 to E minor. So if I'm just playing that with chords, I'm going. If I put a diminished seventh chord, which is symmetrical because I can move it around. E minor. So this diminished seventh functions as a B minor or as a B7. So if the rhythm guitar player is playing
cool.
That's what you as a chord melody player can play. And that's the kind of thing that Wes Montgomery did. He used these voicings all the time. But he was a master at it, of course.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, there's a couple of chords that are really close to a diminished chord, right? Like the minor 6 chord, right? It's like just one note away from being totally diminished, right? What would that be? Something like right? It would be like a diminished chord.
Right.
So there's like a minor chord, there's a diminished chord. Or like the other one was like like an A7, right? And you just add this one note up on top. Right.
Minor 6 chords, which are the same thing as half diminished or minor 7 flat 5 chords. It's the same chord, just voiced slightly differently. That's what Joe Pass used all the time, because minor 6 chords, if we use the same progression, just from going to a B flat to E minor, a minor 6 chord creates what's called an altered dominant sound. That functions as a B7. So with Joe Pass, you hear this kind of thing.
Oh, that's cool. I never knew what an altered dominant meant. I never quite. So you're saying altered dominant means?
Altered dominant is a dominant 7th chord, like a B7th chord in this case, that has a sharp 5, that has a flat 9, that has a sharp 9, sharp 9, flat 9, sharp 5. This voicing, which I can think of as a C minor 6, includes the sharp 9 for a B7, the flat 9 for a B7, the sharp 5 for a B7. So if I'm thinking how to resolve to E minor, and I know these voicings, and I can have these voicings all over the instrument. With these voicings, I can go.
Oh, that's so nice. Wow.
And now you wouldn't hear necessarily Wes Montgomery doing that. So I'm kind of contrasting that. Wes Montgomery would do this diminished 7th thing. I'm obviously simplifying all this, but another guitar player might do the same, resolve the same kind of progression, going. Very different sound.
Oh, that's very cool.
So that's how the minor 6 can be used.
Wow.
And these minor 6 also move, just like these diminished 7ths, also move in thirds. So you can, a trick is to moving up in minor thirds, starting here, or and then up a major third from where you were. You got the idea there?
I think so, yeah.
I'm playing this voicing. We'll go down here. That voicing covers, here's my progression. That progression you know well, right? From Autumn Leaves. It's a minor 2-5. Same chord voicing. A minor 7, A minor 6, C minor 6, and then up a major third to E minor 6.
Oh,
there's the 6.
And there's the same shape you're sliding up?
Same shape.
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
If I play that rather than this kind of voicing, if I play it with these upper string voicings, I get. Which is, you've heard 1,000 times on every soundtrack of every TV show coming out of the 1960s.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
See, this is sort of like where some of that stuff that Joe Pass was talking about. It's supposed to be easy. You know, it starts to make more sense the more stuff that I learn about guitar. With it, a lot of the coolest stuff on guitar is the easiest. You know, you find like a really like simple little shape like this. You know, basically like a compressed G shape that like Django used all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can just put that across different strings, right, and then slide it
Yep.
up and down the neck, and you can get so many sounds with that if you know where to use them. You know,
Taking
like
yeah.
Eddie Lang is one, like, you know, is another person I just love his rhythm guitar playing, and he had this whole thing. Let's see if I can pull it off. It's basically just this one shape, and then he goes,
Right.
and that,
The
then that's
exactly
the
the same
5G, and then you're
concept.
into like a little skippy little song in G major. But yeah, just that whole intro.
Yep.
Right, it's so funny. Just like, yeah, but you know, obviously you have to know what you're doing to come up with something that cool. But ultimately, it's not the most difficult thing to play. You know, once I learned it, I was like, oh, that sounded so like hip to me. You know,
Yep.
but actually, it was like really just one chord shape slid around like power chords. You know?
First you learn the lick, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and then you learn the concept in a way. And
Do you have any?
and however you learn the concept, it's you learn the principle of what that is, and then you apply it. So I mean that's true. I mean that goes back to
Yeah.
this incredibly simple thing. But that changed my life as a
Yeah,
kid when I learned
absolutely.
that. When I learned how to bend a string and go, this is not a rock and roll guitar, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
day somebody taught me that changed my life, because it's not just you're learning Johnny Be Good, you're learning a concept. Once you can actually you have to learn to physically execute whatever the lick is, but whatever that lick is, once you develop whatever you need to physically execute it, then you learn the concept. Oh, I can bend a string, and then the instrument is wide open.
Yeah.
And you listen to, I would say 90% in a way of, at least this is my opinion, 90% of what guitar players do, no matter how accomplished they are, what they have is a bag of simple things, an understanding of the concept, and however they might frame that understanding. And then they've played around with the instrument enough to realize that the application is infinite. So if you know one thing, that's a lot right there. If you have 10 of those things and you're a rock guitar player, the permutations and combinations of all that are almost endless by combining the 10 tricks that you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been showing my students that the you know the and just trying to kind of begin at the beginning of that, and it's hard to know where to start really, even because I mean I basically have started people out with a bass line, right? Like this one, and then from there there's just all these other.
Right, exactly.
And you know, it's all about from there kind of a process of taking away until you have a cool lick, right?
Yep.
You know, some little addition that sort of makes it special, or like you know the Suffragette City, you know, where he's like
Oh yeah.
he's doing that, but then right, just that concept of kind of taking that in a different direction. Do you have any guitarists? We'll probably have to get out of here pretty soon. But do you have any guitarists that aren't necessarily the most accomplished? One thing I've kind of been tripping out on lately is like the people who make you want to play, right? There are certain drummers like Ringo Starr. I think most people agree was like not the most technical drummer, although he's more technical than people give him credit for. But y- you know, but he made people want to play. And like Kurt Cobain, wasn't like the greatest guitarist in the world, but he made a million people start playing guitar because people looked at him and they said, "Oh, I could do that." But then it's like, well, can you do that and sing at the same time? Can you do that and sing while you jump into a drum set? Like. um, but so, are there any guitarists that you can think of that were not necessarily the most accomplished, but that who really inspired you anyway?
Not within jazz as an idiom, because there's a certain level of competency uh,
Yeah.
and almost virtuosity that you have to have to really be a well-known, established jazz guitar player in any way, and to be recorded, over the last 50 years. So no one comes to mind jazz-wise, but obviously rock and roll guitar players. That can really vary. I mean, and finger picking guitar players. I was as a kid. I was very influenced by James Taylor.
James Taylor is amazing.
He's a fantastic guitar player and a virtuoso in a sense, but he's not Joe Pass. Doesn't
No, but
have
fingerstyle guitar, I mean, to get all the notes to ring out and everything is
yeah,
just
beautiful musical sensibility and all those kinds of things. But what impressed me with somebody like James Taylor was the overall sound that they had rather than any particular aspect of technique.
yeah.
So
I
I
think
guess that's
like
what I'm
Simon and
getting at.
Garfunkel, I think, are
Right,
incredible
right.
for that.
Paul
Like,
Simon, sure, exactly. Oh, to go back just quickly to this bit about, wanted to tie it into chord melody, or this bit about learning these little tricks. This first thing that you had pointed out, well, I'm out of tune now,
how dare you?
but open position C with the C on top. If that's your melody,
Mm-hmm.
you've only played C at this point. You could play that chord or just have it as a single note, and you've got.
Ooh, that's
I've
nice.
only played C. I've played this open position voicing, this voicing, this triad voicing, or I could, expand that triad voicing to include a bass note, but it's not necessary. So my melody is do, re, mi, fa, sol,
Yeah.
right? That's the simplest way of thinking about chord melody, is what you initially described. Start with a note that you want to harmonize, find a chord underneath it, or start with a chord, find out what the top note is, change the top note with other chords of the same quality with different top notes, and you have chord melody. If you have a different chord, we've got that. I want to, if I make that an A minor rather than a C, then I've changed the melody's the same, but a very different feel versus.
Oh yeah.
And if I were to make it, let's do.
Oh, dominant chord. Yeah.
Same melody.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
Yeah,
but you learn one of those kinds of things, then you learn the concept. Oh, chord melody note is the top note. Melody note is what the singer is singing, or whatever's functioning as a melody. And then after that, because then you learn that concept, then you apply it whatever music you play. Just try to apply that on the instrument, whatever chord voicings you happen to know.
Right on.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway, I just
I'll
wanted
do-
to tie up my
no, that's
my little rant about licks and so
no,
on.
it's beautiful. I love the way that
It's
you
great.
can take a melody and change the mood of that melody just by switching around some of the chords underneath. Like really, yeah, take that melody and make it sound much more contemplative or kind of sad
Yeah.
almost. Yeah, it's beautiful. Like when you took that A minor and put it in there. So, are there any modern guitarists like Julian Lage that that do it for you? I mean, Julian
I,
Lage is
I
just
like Julian
he's
Lage a lot.
incredible.
Very incredible player. Very very interesting stuff. Very
Mhm.
interesting approach to the instrument. Uh, uh, I've always liked Bill Frisell,
Yeah,
another more or less contemporary guitar player. Goes
Mhm.
back a ways, but
Yeah. But Bill Frisell has a long history at this point. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's and it's, especially when he puts out 3 albums in one year. um, yeah. Not really. Well, anyway. Um, Yeah, this is
Pasquale
not really a
Grasso.
guitar player, but Daniel Lanois, I think,
Yep,
is
yep,
really
yep.
really incredible. Some of the that it's a similar vibration to what Bill Frisell is doing, but Daniel Lanois plays slide, and yeah, I think he put out 4 albums in 2023, which is just wild
Yeah, I know, incredible.
to think.
Yeah, yeah.
Jakob Bro,
Jakob Bro.
who also I think he's played with Bill Frisell and as has Julian Lage. Bill Frisell's played with everybody. It seems like I
Yeah,
saw him
pretty much.
on a YouTube with playing with McCoy Tyner, and he's right. And he had such a distinctive style. It was still Bill Frisell, and there was even like a little bit of a rock and roll edge to what he was doing, but it just totally worked somehow. It's amazing.
Yeah, I like that. It seems like things are getting a little simpler. Not simpler, but yeah, a little bit more embracing the simplicity and slowing down. Kind of getting away from the Mahavishnu orchestra kind of jazz like in your face, and actually trying to do something that's a little more listenable.
It's refreshing.
Yeah, it's a little broader and honestly just kind of but it works well. It's more very musical.
Yeah, yeah.
I read a downbeat listening session that Bill Frisell did, and he heard some folks playing a Thelonious Monk tune. I think it was "Work," and he's like, "Wow, it's like in Berklee School of Music, I guess you just put in everything and every voicing, and you put everything in there that you can think of. The 9th and the 6th and the 13th, and he's like, you don't, he's like." You can leave some space there, and then it really opens it up. And he's like, I wonder what Monk would think of this. He didn't seem to be impressed at all with what these guys were doing. He's like, leave some space. And Bill Frisell's, he's very much inspired by Thelonious Monk.
Right on. Well, great, Hank. Well, thanks for joining us today. And
Yeah.
My
again,
pleasure, Russell.
absolutely
Great.
Anytime
Steve?
before anything before you go that you want to say, where's the next place people can catch you? Is there got anything on the books?
I don't think I have anything coming up in the next month or so. Rehearsing for I think it's for a casino gig down in Salem right now, and but I don't have any of the details on that.
The three of us are playing with Johnny Ward at the Mock Crest Tavern
Every
on
Thursday, yeah.
March 2nd, oblique every Thursday. That
Oh, Mock Crest,
Mock
right?
Crest
That's
Tavern
right. That's
every
coming
other
up.
month.
Forgot about that.
Oh yeah,
That's
when's the next Mock Crest gig?
That's March 2nd. Yeah, first Saturday of every other month.
Cool. And then
and-
when's the Lynn Street Din playing again?
Yes, we are playing February 11th, I believe. That's the group that Russell and I are in.
Yeah.
Yeah, February 11th.
I'm supposed to do this stuff up front. I'm still kind of getting how to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
this whole thing. But if I can get the podcast like out there and going at this point, I feel happy about it. So
Well,
Can I say
thanks,
one-
Steve. I'll be at the Mock Crest on March 2nd.
March 2nd at Mock Crest. All right, right on.
Drop by.
Awesome. I wanted to make, before we sign off, I just wanted to make an observation. I played with you, Hank, for many years, and I really appreciate your playing. You're such a supportive player. It's always about the music, a great listener. You can play any style, you know, country western, Afro-Cuban, swing, rock and roll, and there's always a lot of clarity and space, and you're playing like your phrasing. I love your phrasing and the clarity, and you're never showy. You're never like showing off. So, but clear, you know, you can shred, but you know, you're not a showy player. It's always about the music, and I always appreciate that. So,
Well,
Yeah,
thank
and I
you,
like-
Steve. And I really appreciate that. And of course, it's been a pleasure playing with you all these years.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I like how you can go back and forth. I see you go back and forth between playing those jazz box like what you're playing today, and then playing like distorted, you know, kind of shreddy guitar sometimes with Johnny is pretty awesome. So yeah, I can see you have an appreciation, wide palette that you appreciate and that you bring to the table. So thanks for thanks for joining us, Hank.
My pleasure, Russell.
We're gonna play out with Steve's song. Again, this was let's see, where am I? I'm looking for stuff on here. Yeah, this was Russell's Wall of Sound, and now we're gonna be played out with Steve Cleveland's Feeding the Cats. Thanks again.